Something I always admired about Gigi was she was always this sort of larger than life person, this almost sort of Paul Bunyan esque figure, at least amongst our family.
It's knowing that your door is always open and your path is free to walk. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping bag rolled up and stashed behind your couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by forgotten words and bonds and the ink stains that are dried upon some.
She had built up this persona. And it's not even her that was building it up, it was the family around her. She just had these stories that the family passed around, and not the entire story, just little bits and pieces of it, to the point where basically we had pieced together a facsimile of what her childhood upbringing was, but none of us really knew for sure. I mean, her story really still just remains mysterious even now, which I really find interesting.
Cotton is still king in the South, at least in Blytheville, Arkansas, scene of the 18th Annual National Cotton Picking Contest. Nimble-fingered, strong-backed contestants from all over Dixie take part, ranging in age from 12 to 74.
Though the wheat fields and the clotheslines and the junkyards and the highways come between us.
Blytheville, Arkansas, May 1871. Quaint, unsettled area in North Mississippi County, the early growth of the town was spurred by the massive harvesting of lumber to rebuild after the Great Chicago Fire of the same year. With the mills came what some would describe as a rowdy crowd and a saloon town with a rough reputation. A reputation that would persist through the 1890s.
Flowing gentle on my mind. I dip my cup of soup back from a gurgling, crackling cauldron in some train yard. My beard a roughening coal pile and a dirty hat pulled low across my face. Through cupped hands round the tin can, I pretend to hold you to my breast and find that you're waiting from the back roads by the rivers of my memories, ever smiling, ever gentle on my mind.
There are conflicting dates as to when exactly Blytheville was founded, but it can be reasonably estimated as sometime between May 1889 and January 1892. Change happened more quickly after that. Soon enough, the town had gained a post office. By 1903, it received its first telephone lines.
I walk for miles along the highway. Well, that's just my way of saying I love you. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for you. I stopped to see
my mom was my hero.
On warm evenings, many of the residents would sit out on the wide front porch and visit. Among them was a young couple with a pretty little girl named Pamela. From down the street, a cute little boy named Stevie would ride his tricycle past. Then and there, Cheryl and I decided those were the names we'd use when we had a son or daughter. We never even considered any other names.
She always felt like, and I'm sure, and acted like we were just the lows of her life, and anything she could do for us, she would do. We were very spoiled. We didn't have much money-wise, but we always had a lot of love.
he's crying for me, and as the skies turn gloomy,
was born in a family of 10 siblings, and they lived in dire poverty, and that was before the Depression. And the year after she was born, the Depression hit. And so that just made things worse. But I never ever heard my mom complain about her childhood. She would give me stories, interesting stories about her childhood, and laugh about a lot of them. But she was able to overcome poverty, having to stop school at age 11, self-teaching herself, being her own homeschool teacher and student.
And I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do.
When she met my dad, he had just gotten out of the Army. He served in World War II, and he just had heard about this waitress at a local cafe. He and his buddy had heard about this beautiful waitress, so they went there to meet her, and they were silly, even though they had been serving in the war. And they talked to my mom, and at first my mom said she just thought they were silly and was going to ignore them. But then as she got to know my dad, she discovered he was really smart, and became her Prince Charming, actually. But my dad couldn't really get much of a job in Blytheville, Arkansas, so he told her that he thought he wanted to go to California. And by this time, they realized that they really loved each other and they were going to get married, so this was just her dream come true. So they actually took a chance, drove an old 1937 Oldsmobile that had many flaws across the country on Route 66, which at that time wasn't what I'm used to. We were so naive that it never occurred to us to worry about the future. We just drove along, singing along with the radio, the songs of that time period by our favorite singers, Perry Como, Dick Haymes, etc. Most of them were romantic ballads, and it seemed to us they were all written for us. There weren't phones, not only cell phones, there weren't even the kind of phones you could find along the highway in an emergency. But they didn't seem to mind. They were in love, they were having fun, and my mom described that as one of the most fun times of her life. We stopped when we felt like it. We didn't feel any pressure to hurry, but just enjoyed the sights along Route 66. Burma shave signs made us laugh. The car did show some signs of pettiness. When it rained, the windshield wipers wouldn't work. After dark, the lights didn't work half the time, but we didn't let these minor problems dampen our enthusiasm. They were heading to California, and nothing could make that bad.
It's just the thought of you,
The sign reading 200 miles to Needles, California caused my heart to beat faster. The combination of traveling in an older car on a bumpy 2-lane road, even at what today might seem like a crawl, made me feel that we were going at warp speed. It was late at night when we reached Needles. The only businesses we saw were a gas station and a little hamburger stand, which fortunately for us was still open for business. The man behind the counter seemed anxious to talk. His must have been a lonely job. We ordered Cokes and talked about the weather since it was still over 100 degrees and almost midnight. They stopped in Needles, had a Coke, got back in the car and decided to drive the rest of the night. He set about to enlighten us about this California weather. He told us we should have been there the day before when it got so hot, even the prairie chickens couldn't cross the road. We couldn't help feeling that he saw us just as 2 more Arkies trying to get into his state. We didn't stay long in Needles. As soon as we finished our Cokes, we were back on the road, driving across the desert at night, all the way to San Bernardino before stopping to rest. When we reached San Bernardino, we felt we were really in California, and they just thought, oh my goodness, we have made it now. And I remember my mom telling me that there was a distinctive smell in the air that she and my dad were just sure it must be an ocean breeze. There was a distinctive smell in the air that we could have sworn was the ocean breezes. Actually, it was smog.
Fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away.
And these two people had traveled alone, sought out jobs in the South Bay region of California, ended up living in a boarding house near Pershing Square. Back on Route 66, we drove on to Torrance, where Cheryl knew several people.
All during these months, we had close contact with our friends, Bill and Louise Brawley. They also lived in Los Angeles in a variety of places. In addition to his day job and in exchange for room and board, Al worked the dinner shift as a busboy in the dining room of a fancy hotel on Alvarado Street, not too far from where we lived. We would go over to visit him periodically and see how the other half lived. This is where he met Eleanor, his future wife. She was the dining room hostess.
They both got a job. They were getting to know California. And then my mom got pregnant, and they did make a decision. They needed to go back to Blytheville because if they were going to have a baby, they wanted to be by family and a doctor they trusted.
I'll fly away in the morning when I die. Hallelujah, by and by. I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then
She was an expert in history. She followed current affairs, and there was never a conversation where she didn't want to be a part and could add a lot to the conversation. She was, in fact, you could ask my mom at any place if she would get up and speak about something. My mom was always able to do that. She was that comfortable with speaking and loved people.
Like as a mother, like do you have specific memories
Yes.
like of your childhood?
I do. I'll start when I was a little older. Because I don't have vivid memories of being a baby, but what she writes about when Steve and I were babies, even though she came from such simple means, she was the best mom. She was the most attentive mom. She worried that maybe we were going to get polio or something else because you couldn't get a vaccination for polio back then, and there was a big polio epidemic when we were toddlers. But I remember distinctly when I was a older girl and a teenager that my mom always made our house so comfortable. My mom would put a big pot of what she called that stuff on the stove that would cook for 3 or 4 hours, or hamburger stew. So our house always smelled good on a Saturday. I have that memory. I also have another memory. My mom and dad would go grocery shopping every Friday night, and my brother and I would stay home. And my mom was always very sensible about the food she'd make. She was like the original eat a healthy diet person before most people that I know knew about it. And I remember also that the first time my mom made tacos, and we didn't even know about tacos until, and I don't remember how old I was, but I was probably an early teen, and she made them, I just thought that was the best food I had ever had. You know, taco, yay! So my mom was just a wonderful mom, a loving, attentive mom, and she always put everyone else first. In fact, for all my years after I grew up and got married, I never ever called my mom without her acting like I had just made her day because I called. That was just the way she always was.
Well, I guess the first thing we can talk about is you, I think, are the newest member of the family, if my math is right.
I would say so.
Your sort of specific memories of her would be from her in her 90s exclusively. So I guess just tell me a little bit about that.
I mostly remember just whenever we come over, me and Mitchell, when we come over and visit, Gigi was always just so warm and welcoming. Always a greeting, always a hug. She really reminded me of my great-grandma, so it kind of felt like her presence was always there. Also, I just loved hearing about her early days of her growing up. Her memory is incredible, and I always thought she's just so sharp. It's just incredible that everything she told us about her kids growing up. She really liked to listen. Gigi would always listen. She was just really sweet whenever one of us was talking in the room that she was in. Just always had the time to listen. Just always make you feel comfortable whenever we were there visiting her. When talking to her, it's actually really easy talking to Gigi. You just always felt like welcome or part of the family. It was always just like a breath of fresh air. Literally reminded me of, she just like felt like a great grandmother to me personally. So I really liked her relationship with Mitchell's parents' dog Buddy. He's having a hard time breathing due to like a tumor on his side, some blindness and deaf in both ears. So he's kind of having it rough due to his age, and so I think Gigi really could relate to him on that level, just going through the hardships of old age.
Now, you do a pretty good impression of her, also.
Yes, I do. I didn't know we were doing that.
Do you want to do it? It's okay if you don't want to.
No, I can. I specifically remember one time when she offered me wine, and she was so sharp, like, in her movements and stuff. She's like, "You want a glass of wine, babe?" And, like, I'd be like, "Heck yeah, I want some wine, Gigi." So, like, me and her bonded over some wine, and it was great. It was really cute.
His own, and the joy we share as we tear.
My last memory of Gigi, coincidentally, is easily the funniest one, despite the situation. And I think it's a real example of what kind of a special person she was. Basically, Heather and I went to go visit Granny and Gigi about 2 weeks before she passed. Granny, as a gift to Gigi, bought a copy of the annual Farmer's Almanac, which Gigi loved thumbing through. We were playing a little game, the four of us, where I would read out the name of a phobia. One of the entries in this book was a list of unusual phobias and what they meant. So I was reading out one of the names of the phobias, and after playing the game for a while, Gigi thought it would be funny to, out of the blue, she asked, "Did somebody turn the lights off?" "Oh my god, did somebody turn the lights off? I can't see, I'm blind!" And then turned to the three of us with the wickedest smile. And we had been terrified, of course, but also been party to probably the wickedest joke that someone can make while they're in the dying process, and it really was terrific.
I've seen so many changes in my lifetime. Technological advances are awesome, of course, but it also seems to me that outlook on life in general has improved. When I hear someone mention the good old days, I know in my heart that we are living them now. We used to have fried bologna. we never had deep fried bologna. We just put it in a skillet, and of course Spam too, which was leftover.
I love Spam.
Yeah, I have Spam right now in the cabinet. But that's crazy. But they were so unspoiled. It's like, this works, and it's the cheapest thing. That's what we're gonna eat.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.